Welcome into San Francisco 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and just when you thought just maybe 49er fans can have a very simple and quiet offseason, everything has gone haywire. We have Brock Purdy contractual updates. We have Brandon Aiyuk trade rumors. Davante Adams was released today. And could the San Francisco 49ers be trying to trade their leading rusher of the 2024 NFL season? All that coming up next right here on 49ers Access. Like I was saying, folks, it is never a quiet offseason for the San Francisco 49ers. It feels like every offseason is filled with contractual drama, maybe some trade rumors, or whether it's the quarterback position, the receiver position. There's always something going on that makes fans somewhat uneasy out there in the Bay Area, including myself, which this morning, I know this past weekend was rather bumpy. The Aiyuk trade rumors, this felt very murky. Deebo Samuel got traded. It feels like something big is coming. Now, you're hoping that big thing is extending Brock Purdy. Maybe it is signing a big name free agent or so, albeit the latter seems unlikely. It's a very interesting offseason where San Francisco is looking to trim off the fat of the roster and remake themselves and recalibrate, retool, if you want to use the words that general manager John Lynch used. That said, we got a ton of news this morning coming out of the NFL Combine, still via Matthew Berry of NBC Sports. Even ESPN's Adam Schefter dropped two massive nuggets of information we have to get to, and I want to start with quarterback Brock Purdy. Now, maybe outside of what transpires at the wide receiver position, that being Deebo Samuel's trade and maybe Brandon Aiyuk's inevitable departure this offseason, Brock Purdy is one of the biggest storylines in the entire NFL season. I think he supersedes that of the NFL draft for the Niners. I think when you're talking about locking up your franchise quarterback, that should be the priority for this team. However, Adam Schefter decided to drop rather some negative news about Brock Purdy today. So go ahead and listen to this clip and tell me what you think, and we'll dive into it after it plays.
And Brock Purdy obviously is going to want to get a deal done, and the Niners would want to get a deal done. But the issue is he's scheduled to make $5.1 million this season. He then could be tagged after next season for $41 million. He could be tagged the season after that for $51 million. So if you don't get a deal done with Brock Purdy, and you're the Niners, and again, this would not be what Brock Purdy would want, I would imagine. Certainly not what his agent would want. He would play for $5 million this year, $41 next year, $51 the year after. You're talking about $97+ million over the next 3 years, which for most people would be incredible money, but not for a quarterback who's waiting to get paid. And so the Niners have a bit of a cap issue, cash issue, and so they can't put Brock Purdy necessarily where he might be. They can go to a certain level. They'd want to pay him, but it's not going to be, I would imagine, quite as high as most people think.
Let's talk about that last sentence before I dive into some of the inaccuracies of Schefter's report there, which unfortunately seem to be common this offseason among a lot of reporters in the NFL. That Brock Purdy's contract may not be as high as many people think. Now, there is clearly a ton of speculation as to where Brock Purdy may land, whether it is $60 million. We have kind of hinted towards maybe 57.5. That's kind of the Jared Goff contract, but kind of reevaluated for inflation. That to me makes the most sense when you talk about the market value for a starting quarterback this year, mainly being Brock Purdy. Then there's those that think sign a Baker Mayfield style deal, $30 million, $45 million. There's a lot that is being said when it comes to Brock Purdy's next contract. Now, I think Brock deserves to get paid. I think he's going to get paid. But when you hear one of the most in-tuned people say that Brock Purdy's probably not going to get what many think he will, and let's just assume, because later in that clip, which really didn't have much to say, Schefter dives into, let's use the number 50. Okay, let's use that number 50. Let's say the Niners don't want to go over 50. And Brock's like, well, I want 57. I want 55. Maybe you up the guarantees and you backload that contract. Look, clearly it depends on the structure of that deal, not the per year average we all like to see and go, oh, wow. But when you hear Brock Purdy's probably not going to get what we think he'll get, I think that perfectly leads into what we've heard at the combine via Matthew Berry today, in which he says that the San Francisco 49ers and quarterback Brock Purdy are quote unquote far apart on a deal. Now, all the indications we've gotten from Diana Rossini and others are like they want to get a deal done. They want to get it done soon. And I think it's important to clarify that we have no idea when these contract talks started. They could have started at the combine. They could have began day one of the combine when Brock Purdy and his agent sat down with Kyle and John, and they kind of started to narrow things down, or Prague and John, because Kyle is involved in these things. But we don't know when these contract talks started. So they could be far apart now, but really it isn't that big of a deal because they just started on things. They'll progress into a better number later on as the offseason progresses. But Schefter points out the reasoning for maybe Brock Purdy not getting the deal that he wants due to the 49ers, in his words, having some cap issues, if you will. And when you hear that as a fan that hopefully watches this show and others out there, you kind of scoff and say, seriously, why do we continue to trot out the idea that San Francisco, yes, they are trying to move off of heavily priced veterans, Deebo Samuel, maybe Kyle Juszczyk, Javon Hargrave. They are trying to, again, trim the fat off the roster, but San Francisco currently has $33 million in cap space. They can then restructure Fred Warner's contract. They can then extend George Kittle's contract and almost recoup a lot of the money in which they are going to spend by trading away Deebo Samuel in two fell swoops. So this idea that San Francisco has cap problems, I think, is wrong. It's incorrect. However, I don't think it's incorrect to then buy into what Adam is saying, that maybe San Francisco does not want to pay Brock Purdy big money. We've heard so much this offseason that San Francisco has viewed extensions for Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and even George Kittle and Nick Bosa as kind of deals they felt like they lost. And when you hear that, and you hear it, and so much is being made from, we keep losing these big money deals, that leads into the next big money deal, which is Brock Purdy's, maybe them feeling like we have to win this one. And to win this one, we can't give him over $50 million per year. And they're in a tricky situation because when you talk about Brock Purdy's contract, this is a really bad quarterback class. The veteran options on the market aren't very good. They're not going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. Matthew Stafford's already going back to the Rams. They're not going to sign Daniel Jones or Russell Wilson or Sam Darnold. This is a very Brock Purdy is going to stay in San Francisco type thing. They've said the entire time, the entire offseason, they wanted to be here as long as they're here. So they're narrowed in on Brock Purdy. But the Niners do have leverage because they can say, well, what would you get on the open market? Well, Brock can just wait and see if things happen. And, the Niners do have the ability to franchise tag him next offseason and the offseason after that. And if they are hard set on not giving him $50 million this year, they can say, hey, Brock, we're not going to pay you big money. Maybe they'll give him some kind of raise, but you're going to have to play on that $5 million salary you have this year. And then next year, if you're still good, we'll tag you. Then after that, we'll tag you again, which next year's tag is about $45 million, I believe. And then in 2 years from now, that tag is about $51 million. So Schefter talks about, would Brock want to take 3 years, $150 million? Or would he take, a bunch of 1-year deals on a franchise tag? Obviously, if you're Brock, you want the guaranteed money, which is where Schefter is heading towards, of like, they can guarantee you 3 years of $150 million. Wouldn't you take that? Which I think would be shocking, but a lot of this is not coming from John Lynch. A lot of this is not coming from Kyle Shanahan. All of this is coming from, again, those shadowy figures behind the scenes that are pissed off. They lost on deals such as Deebo, Aiyuk, Bosa, McCaffrey, and Trent. this front office, mainly, again, those guys behind the scenes in the suites smoking cigars and they have their scotch on the rocks, whatever they drink up there, they're sitting back like, I'm tired of losing money. I'm tired of wasting money on guys that aren't playing well for us. Hence why you hear the Aiyuk rumors this year as well. But when you hear Adam Schefter talk about the Niners may have to tag Brock Purdy, he's not just making that up from somewhere. He's hearing that from somebody likely inside of San Francisco's organization, whether it is some random executive or maybe it is someone known that we just don't know who it is just yet. But again, I want to push back and say that the Niners can pay Brock Purdy with their current cap figure of $33 million that they have in cap space. However, I do think that this is how they are going to sell the fan base. This is how they are going to sell the team on them needing to make a big move. And I want to say what's up to Rob D in the YouTube chat for a hot second. Papa J, what's going on? Tommy Huxley, how's it going? Keith, what's going on, brother? Hope you're all doing well. But I think that when you hear Adam Schefter, a day or so after you hear Brandon Aiyuk rumors and Kyle Juszczyk rumors and Javon Hargrave rumors and now Jordan Mason rumors and Deebo Samuel gets traded, I think this is how they sell us on them maybe making some pivotal move of, well, we couldn't pay Brock Purdy unless we traded away XYZ player or cut XYZ player. Now, we know that's a lie, but I think this is San Francisco setting us up for something rather drastic because they're hearing that from somewhere. Adam Schefter is getting that information from somewhere, likely from the Niners camp. That, well, we can't pay Brock, and we have to cut corners here or there. And if we don't do that, Brock Purdy's not going to be a Niner, or we're going to have to franchise tag him, which nobody wants to do. I think this is them preparing us for them to make a big move, whether it is a trade for somebody or trading away Brandon Aiyuk. I think this is them essentially gearing us up for a version of some NFL spring cleaning. You've heard it from Deebo Samuel. Now he's gone. We're going to hear it from Kyle Juszczyk. He may go. Javon Hargrave probably going to get cut soon, although there are some trade rumors around him kind of sparkling up here or there. Jordan Mason may be gone. We've heard recalibration, retooling. This is them saying, okay, get ready. We're trying to work on things. Now, moves may not happen, but it certainly feels like when you hear that you can't pay the quarterback because you want to cut corners elsewhere and you don't have enough money, they're essentially saying, we're going to clean house and get ready, get prepared. And their selling point as well, if you want that franchise quarterback, these moves are necessary, which I don't buy, but I think this is them doing that. I think they're, as Robbie says, what? They lie? Exactly. This is them feeding information to Adam Schefter, letting him know, hey, run with the material, and essentially lie to the entire NFL world to make us look better up top. They don't like the deals they've gotten done. They are trying to win the Brock Purdy one. I think they are trying to make this look like they have to trade away some big names. Brandon Aiyuk may be one of those, to make it look like they have to pay for Brock Purdy. This is all a bunch of PR stuff. It is optics. This is simply San Francisco trying to save face, knowing that we tried to go all in. It didn't work. And now we have to cut some corners to pay our franchise quarterback to keep that window open. I think this is them feeding lies to Schefter. They do not have to cut anybody to pay Brock Purdy. In fact, there are ways to save money, but they are gearing us up for something big and getting us ready for maybe the next thing Adam Schefter hit on, which was the potential trade of Brandon Aiyuk. And Keys says it here. He says, spot on, Sterling. Niners supposedly looking to sell 10% is all BS, trying to make excuses for all the trades and signing. Now, I don't think selling 10% of the team matters that much, but I am on board with the fact that this is San Francisco playing PR, trying to look good, and they want to win these deals. They want to save that cap, save that money. They want to make this seem like this is the only options they have. It's either you get Brock Purdy or you keep all the other players that really aren't playing well for you, hence why Adam Schefter talked about Brandon Aiyuk today. And I want to make something clear. that I do not think the San Francisco 49ers are shopping Brandon Aiyuk. They're not going to give him away. They are going to, I think in my mind, would like to keep Aiyuk. I think there's a reason as to why they signed Brandon Aiyuk, and we'll dive into that for a second. But I also believe, like anybody on the roster, because Kyle Shanahan said himself that if somebody offered them 2 or 3 first-round draft picks for himself, he'd say, okay, I'll take the deal and go coach elsewhere. So the Niners are willing to look at anybody and everybody's on the table when it comes to listening, at least to offers, which is why Adam Schefter said this today on ESPN via the Pat McAfee show.
Well, again, I think that the 49ers in their particular financial situation are open to listening on just about anybody, right? And so if there's a team out there that is willing to take on the Brandon Aiyuk contract with him coming off the torn ACL, I'm sure they would listen, absolutely. But again, you've got to find a team that's willing to take on the player with the injury, with the contract. That's not a simple thing to do. Look, if there's no knee injury, it's a simple deal. But because there's a knee injury, because he may miss the first half of next season, and there are questions about, when he'll get back next year, there are a whole host of pending issues. But the Niners, again, for them to play in the free agency sandbox, they're going to have to find ways to clear out salary, whether that's through Brandon Aiyuk or Jordan Mason or any other player that they don't bring back or let go. They have to find ways to get money to help field the kind of roster that they want. So if an offer comes in on Brandon Aiyuk and there's a team out there that's willing to take on that particular situation, I'm sure they would be open to listening to it.
I think everything Adam Schefter just said is true. If a team comes to San Francisco and says, here's a 3rd-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, they'd say, great, cool. That said, if they are actively listening on Brandon Aiyuk, which, again, I don't think they're shopping him, but they're open to the idea of trading him, there's a lot of ways to look at this. And I will get on my soapbox for a second here because I think this is a complete disaster for the San Francisco 49ers. They botched last summer. They botched their salary cap last summer. They botched their receiver room. The way they're operating the last 2 years is how dysfunctional teams operate. It doesn't make sense. It is head-scratching. And I get there are so many valid reasons as to why they could trade Brandon Aiyuk. However, why even sign Brandon Aiyuk to a massive contract, 4 years, $120 million, $30 million per year? Why put yourself in a position to have to spend that kind of money on Brandon Aiyuk, knowing at the time last year, the receiver market was just skyrocketing right in front of your face? They sat on their hands. They waited on it thinking, oh, we can do what we always do and just wait and ride this thing out, and it backfired big time. Now, for whatever reason, they're blaming Aiyuk. They're frustrated on Aiyuk when they should be frustrated with themselves. They let this happen. They allowed this to happen. I get it. There was the trade request and social media posts on TikTok and going on podcasts. I get all that. Aiyuk doesn't have any fault here. However, this is a complete and utter disgrace as to what San Francisco is doing. Why, after signing Aiyuk to a massive deal in which he plays 7 games last year, destroys his knee, tears his ACL, tears his MCL, tears other ligaments in his knee, and now his entire trade market is in the gutter. It is tanked. Nobody is going to give you anything near what you were asking for last year for him, and now you're angry enough to actually make the trade and saying, we're regretful, we're upset, he pissed us off. How dare you point the finger at somebody else when you are primarily the reason to blame for the issues? And yes, I know Aiyuk made things tougher, but the front office put themselves in a position to allow him to make things tougher for them. They waited and waited and waited. Oh, we'll wait things out. We'll penny pinch. They could have got that deal done back in March, in March before DJ Moore signed, before Amon-Ra St. Brown signed, and they didn't. They did not. They sat on their hands. They waited for this thing to skyrocket in regards to the receiver market, and they put themselves in this position. It is a terrible look from the outset. The optics look terrible. You sign a guy to a 4-year, $120 million deal after you have to rush upstairs to avoid trading him away to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and who John Lynch was on the phone with actively talking trades. And now a year later, you want to say, we regret it, we don't want him here, we don't like him here. Well, you can trade him for now pennies on the dollar. Last year, you had offers from the Jaguars for rumored to be a Zay Jones and a first-round pick or a high-end second-round pick, and you decided to sit there and do nothing. And you redid Debo's contract, you re-signed Brandon Aiyuk, and you drafted Pearsall. They put themselves in this position. It is a terrible look for this franchise to pay a big-name player, watch him get hurt, get pissed off because he got hurt and didn't play well, and then say, you know what, we're irritated. We're done with you. You're going to lose a massive dead cap hit. And again, the outside, the optics, the PR, it looks like a dysfunctional group of irritated billionaires getting pissed off because they're not getting a return on the investment. What is this? Like, this is what the Browns do. This is what other teams do. This is not what the San Francisco 49ers, who have been to 2 Super Bowls, do. This is what you see some like the New York Jets do. They pay players big money, and after 1 year, they're done. I get it. There's a lot to be saved from trading away Brandon Aiyuk, and we can dive into that here. Because yes, while you can talk about it being ridiculous and just outright dumb and unnecessary, and just how bad it looks for Jed York and these other executives and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan who put their necks on the line to retain Brandon Aiyuk. If you want to tighten the reins, then cut Kyle Juszczyk, cut Javon Hargrave. Tell them you have less to spend this offseason, less guaranteed money. You can't play big game hunting. You have to cut on certain areas. Don't bring back Dre Greenlaw. Don't pay for a high-end third cornerback. Don't pay for a safety. Use your 11 draft picks for a reason. You traded with Deebo Samuel, great. You don't trade a 27-year-old wide receiver he just gave $120 million to after 1 year. You don't do that. You don't trade those guys for a 5th-round pick. That is irresponsible. It's negligent for a front office to do those things. And yet they want to preach that we don't have enough money, this, that, and the other. Oh, we're irritated. We're upset. How dare you even tell us that it even worked that way? That's a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of baloney. You're just angry that you lost a couple deals, and now you're throwing a hissy fit and a temper tantrum. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. That said, I do want to look at the reasons as to why you can sell me on this deal, where they're going to lose this year. If they trade Aiyuk now, they're going to lose this year. They're not getting a 2nd-round pick. They're not getting a 1st-round pick. And look, I don't buy into the idea that you have to have these top-end receivers. You don't have to have Debo and Aiyuk and Pearsall and Jennings, albeit you want to have one of those guys there to help you out. I love Javon Jennings. I love Pearsall. You don't have to have the dog, albeit you want to have the dog. And I think if Aiyuk was healthy, you'd have the dog as your number 1 guy. The entire idea last year was you draft Pearsall, you have Aiyuk, who's hopefully healthy, albeit he's not now. You have Javon Jennings, you have Kittle, you have McCaffrey. Your offense is immensely better than what it was with Deebo Samuel being your number 2. But let's talk about the other way this trade could potentially be looked at. Trading Aiyuk, yes, will be a loss now. You're not getting anything back from that you want unless they're eating future money, which doesn't seem like they want to, knowing the fact they refused to do so during the Deebo Samuel negotiations. They could have had a 4th-round pick for him. They said, nope, you're taking the entire salary. The Commanders said, okay, then nope, you're not getting a 4th-round pick. If they wouldn't do it for Deebo, why would they do it for Aiyuk? So, okay, that's understood now. What team is going to give you a day 2 pick? Maybe you get a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick, but I do not think they're going to get that unless they're giving draft pick compensation in return to the other team. But in the very simplest form, Trading Aiyuk, not knowing his future. He's injured. He may never be the same. May be the biggest swing they can make in order to keep their window open and almost bust that window wide open. Because at that point, you have Brock Purdy, you have George Kittle, you have Christian McCaffrey. You'd have all these pieces in order still, even after trading Brandon Aiyuk, who's probably not going to come back until late October, maybe November. I'd probably think November. That said, if you trade Brandon Aiyuk in the very simplest form of the trade, it's a $7 million cap loss this year. So you go from around $33 million in cap space to $26 million in cap space. Again, you can get that back with restructures and extensions for Kittle and Warner. But that's before even paying Brock Purdy more money, which, again, if you're trading or you're trading Aiyuk away and you're losing cap space, it makes signing Brock Purdy harder, at least if you want to front load that deal to a certain extent. However, future-wise, when you come to maybe lowering Brock's cap hit or keeping it relatively lower, you talk about 3 years from now, San Francisco would save $103 million. That is their net gain, if you will, if they trade Brandon Aiyuk. And that is one of the reasons as to why this is even on the table. That they can lose now. They have cap space to lose. They're okay losing it. However, they can save $103 million over the next 4 seasons. Yet, that deal has to get done before April 1st when his bonus kicks in. So if Brandon Aiyuk is going to get traded, they have less than a month to get that thing done. Free agency starts in about 6 to 8 days from now, depending on when you're watching this. They would probably like to get this thing done relatively quickly. And there is a hard deadline to get this thing done. That is April 1st. They want to avoid the bonus because they want to have the max savings. They don't want to have to deal with a higher end dead cap hit, which will be astronomical if they move him. We can talk about dead cap hits. It's an $18.4 million dead cap hit just to trade Brandon Aiyuk, although maybe the dead cap hit isn't that big of a deal. But if you combine Debo and Aiyuk's, you're about $50 million in dead cap moving off of your 2 receivers. Yikes. Oh my God. What are we doing? I get it. You want to save $100 million in the future. Awesome. I get that. But $50 million in dead cap? Who are we? The New Orleans Saints? You want to win now? Moves like this usually indicate, like John Lynch has kind of said, like I said, this is a clean house but remain competitive kind of year, and they have the high-end players to get it done, but you can tell this team, well, isn't punting on the year, certainly isn't all in on the year. And I think that, again, going back to my complaint of what a mess this is, any team acquiring Aiyuk for the next 4 years would pay him about $25 million this year, 27 in 2026, about 28 in 2027, and 30 in 2028. So if they get back medicals, in which Aiyuk does have a test coming up on his knee, maybe he passes that. Maybe that is the tipping point on things, that if Aiyuk passes that test, that's when a trade can get done, because that usually means he can pass the physical. So maybe there's a reason as to why John Lynch mentioned that in his combine press conference, that, well, BA has an upcoming test. Maybe that wasn't, hey, here's a good update. Maybe that was, hey, here. That could mean as soon as that's done and he gets a thumbs up and he's good to go, they're going to kick his ass out of the door. Because if you have executives who are openly disgruntled with him, they're angry with him, maybe shouldn't have signed that deal anyways. That said, if they're that frustrated, letting it very clear that they want him out of the building and they're tired and they're done with it, San Francisco could just be buying its time for Aiyuk to pass that off in regards to his knee test. Now, I know he's in New York, and Niner Media says here he thinks people are reading too much into his recent IG post. He doesn't get it. The caption was very, very difficult to understand, I will add. I don't really know what he was meaning by that. I don't think it means too much. I also don't know why he's in New York City, but it is March. Maybe it means nothing. I also don't know where his test is being done. Maybe it is being done in New York City, albeit it seems rather redundant for a knee he had surgery on. There's probably swelling there if that's the case. Usually your ligaments and bones and tendons and muscles swell after a long flight, which if he lives in the Bay, it's a long flight to New York City. I've done it plenty of times. I don't know. It could mean nothing. It could mean something. I think the league offices are in New York City. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I think they are. Maybe that's why, but I wouldn't read too much into it. However, I think that big knee test he has coming up is going to be a very defining day if they want to trade him. If he can pass that, because look, San Francisco could say, we're listening to offers. We'll trade Brandon Aiyuk. We don't want to, but if you call us, wink, 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 we're open to it. If he can't pass a physical, it doesn't matter. Like, you can listen all you want. No team is trading for I don't want to call him a cripple, but no team is trading for a wide receiver that cannot pass a physical. It literally cannot pass through the league offices. It won't get signed off on. They'll have to take a physical again later to get a deal done. So, I don't get the trade. I think it's a massive PR thing. I think this is above John and Kyle's head. I think this is I would not be shocked to hear there is some disgruntlement feelings or disgruntled feelings in regards to Kyle and John from random people on the executives. I don't think it is Jed York. That would be kind of foolish of him to piss off his GM and his head coach, which has been the most successful tenure of Jed York's ownership career. I just think there again are these unnamed people that are causing problems. And I think they're kind of doing whatever it takes to, yes, be smart and cut some fat off the roster, but also trading away Brandon Aiyuk, who isn't even 28 years old. Like, come on. Like, okay, just admit you messed up, which, to give the Niners credit, and I do want to be honest here, the Niners have been very stubborn in previous years from moving off of people. In recent years, though, they were very quick to trade away Trey Lance to get a 4th-round pick. This is maybe them saying, look, the longer we wait, the worse this gets for us. Maybe they know his medicals aren't very great, and if they don't trade him now, there'll be no value. Now, I could push back on that and say, well, let's say his medicals are just okay. Let's say that come November, Aiyuk comes back and looks rather competent, maybe isn't himself, but there's promise. There's some signs of, okay, there is the exact same receiver he was pre-injury. Well, then his trade value goes a little bit back up, where now, let's say they want a 3rd-round pick for Aiyuk. It would probably be Aiyuk and maybe a 6th for a 3rd-round pick, maybe a 5th in Aiyuk for a 3rd-round pick, or maybe it is just Aiyuk and they need some money to get a 3rd-round pick, although I don't think San Francisco wants to do that. I think there is value in at least giving Aiyuk 1 year, getting him back on the field, maybe have him reestablish some trade value, because I am completely for if Aiyuk comes back and they need some money, and he looks okay. He looks like maybe once he gets another year under his belt, he'll be back to his true form. I don't mind trading him next offseason. It's less commitment from the receiving team. You can get a higher draft pick more likely in return. I just think there's value in housing Brandon Aiyuk, if you will, for 1 year, letting him rehab, letting him come back for you, letting him maybe contribute for you. And if San Francisco is seriously not really in the race this year, just keep him. You're going to re-sign Brock Purdy. You're going to have George Kittle. You're going to cut some players and you're going to maneuver your roster. But if you already don't feel the need to add a receiver, then why do you feel the need to trade a receiver away? Like, when they trade away Deebo Samuel, I don't know if in their mind they're thinking, well, Brandon's also gone too, which I get to begin the year he is, but when you're telling at least Tim Kawakami that you don't mind Tariq Owens being the receiver number 3 next year, it's like, wait, what? Is that like is that a Band-Aid? Is that a until Aiyuk gets back kind of deal? I'm not sure. But I tell you what, again, you're going to have a hard time selling this fan base on losing Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel in the exact same year, especially if, let's say, Pearsall doesn't play well, although I think he will, or let's say Javon Jennings, who, reminder, is in the last year of his deal too. So maybe this is them playing the long game, knowing that in a couple of years they want to redo Warner and they want to redo Kittle and they want to redo Javon Jennings and they want to bring back certain people. But on the offside or the offset, this is likely Trent Williams' last year. I'm going to assume once he retires, he'll redo that deal again to make almost no money on the cap in 2026. So it's not like they're not going to find some relief somewhere. Like they have some older players that are off the books next year. I get it. They're going to have some bigger payments, but I don't know. It's a very confusing offseason, a lot of rumors. But I'll tell you what, no matter what happens with this team, we're all going to still say fans. And if you want to see them play in person, you want to go to an NBA game this year, maybe you want to go see your favorite baseball team play as the season picks up. We're currently in spring training. The Giants look okay. If you're in San Francisco, Goodwood Giants game, the park is just beautiful. I love being there at Oracle, although they call it AT&T still. Go ahead and use that promo code 49ErsAccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And let's kind of continue the receiver conversation, albeit let's transition to a receiver not currently on the roster. Although, if they trade Brandon Aiyuk, a lot of people on Twitter, on X, on social media are clamoring, are screaming, are yelling, you better sign Davante Adams, get Davante with the 49ers. And I don't get it. Yes, Davante Adams as a pure receiver, that means as a catcher of the football, as a route runner, makes a ton of sense to play in San Francisco. Davante Adams as an ex-receiver that you can line up outside and be your perimeter guy, the ins and outs, the slants, the deep ball, it's all there. The route tree is unlike anybody else's. Davante is a true alpha receiver, albeit he's in his early 30s and has somewhat lost a step. It just, the idea of Davante Adams coming to San Francisco, I think, is more so married to what you'd see in like Madden, or it's married to the idea more than the actual product you'd see on the field. Because the reports today, Davante Adams got released by the New York Jets, and I know he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers still, but according to Ian Rappaport, Davante, apparently the pull of being on the West Coast is very real. Now, West Coast usually means that of California. I don't think he'd go to Seattle, and there is no team in Oregon. So it's mainly California, and there are 3 teams currently in California: the Niners, the Rams, and the Chargers. So a lot of speculation of, okay, well, you're going to trade Aiyuk, well, you can get Davante Adams. But if you read into what Schefter, I think it was Schefter, was saying, that Davante wants to win this year. He wants to ring chase. Rob D says here, if Davante wants to ring chase, give him a discount on a short-term deal. I'm okay with that. Which in theory sounds great, but we all know this, that what is the one positional group that Kyle Shanahan is tough on? It's not quarterbacks. It's not the offensive line. It's wide receiver. He has a he's very opinionated on what he gets out of his wide receiver. He's very particular, if you will, as to what and how his receivers play. And while Davante can give you everything you like from actually a receiving standpoint, again, he's lost a step, so the speed isn't there as it used to be, but the route running, the separation, just the high IQ player that he is. One, I don't think he actually fits in San Francisco, but I'll get to that in a second. 2, when I hear Davante Adams wants to play for the West Coast teams, two teams come to mind. And it's not the Niners. It is the Rams and Chargers. The Chargers have Herbert already locked up. McConkey was phenomenal last year. They are a team looking for a number 2, albeit number 1 receiver, which would be Davante Adams to pair with Lab McConkey. They're probably going to lose Joshua Palmer. Jim Harbaugh, hard-nosed guy. I think if anybody out there would sign Davante, I think would really be open to the idea of Jim Harbaugh and Davante Adams playing together, or at least, on the same team. I think it opened up many things for a Charger offense. And for the Rams, Matthew Stafford's back. Puka Nacua is still there. Probably going to trade or cut Cooper Kupp. Okay. If you let go of Cooper Kupp, yeah, you can get younger, but the Rams are bringing back a 36-year-old quarterback, 37-year-old quarterback. They don't seem to be wanting to get younger offensively. And when you want to ring chase, well, Davante Adams makes a heck of a lot more sense to the Rams than the San Francisco 49ers, especially if San Francisco is trimming off the fat on the roster. If you're going to trade Deebo Samuel, and you're going to trade Brandon Aiyuk, and you're going to cut Javon Hargrave, and you're maybe not going to bring back Dre Greenlaw, and maybe Kyle Juszczyk's gone, all 30 years old or near 30-year-old players minus Aiyuk, and you're going to let Hufanga leave, and you're going to watch Trace Ward leave in free agency. Why would you then bring in Davante Adams? Why would he want to play for you? Clearly, you can tell San Francisco is going through a transition. Davante Adams does not seem like a player that wants to go through a transition. Now, San Francisco could give that transition a jolt with a great draft and a great free agency, but if Davante wants to win now, wouldn't it scream more like players that were in the playoffs last year, or teams that were in the playoffs last year, and one of those won the division, has a Super Bowl winning head coach, and a roster that beat San Francisco twice last year, and a really good defense for the Rams? And the Chargers were in the playoffs, desperately need to help the offensive line, but a wide receiver 1 could undoubtedly help the roster out there. And then you get into why Davante as a player doesn't make sense in San Francisco. There's a massive ego there. He threw the biggest fit ever with the Raiders, which maybe in retrospect isn't that big of a deal, but he's a powder. If you don't get the football, he's acting like a diva, if you will. And then it comes down to exactly what I was hinting at earlier. Kyle Shanahan is so particular with how he views wide receivers. And what's the one sentence we all say every time Kyle drafts or signs a receiver? No block, no rock. And let me tell you this. If Davante Adams is going to scream and whine and complain about not getting the rock, well, his 31.9 run blocking grade last year will certainly not help you. That was with the Raiders. And then altogether last year, he had a 43.9 run blocking grade. He hasn't had a run blocking grade above 60 since 2020. And he's only had one of those, a run blocking grade above 60, since 2018. He does not want to block, yet he still wants to rock. He's not going to help you in the running game. He's not going to help you go out there deep downfield and be like Brandon Aiyuk has been, and go block a safety, go block a cornerback chasing your ball carrier. Davante Adams, schematically, play style wise, does not fit with the San Francisco 49ers. Does not fit with the San Francisco 49ers whatsoever. And Rob D says, dude, why do you have to make all these good points? I'm just trying to be honest with you, brother. I get it. The theory of, Davante Adams, wow, oh my goodness, the name value's there. The way Niner fans view Davante Adams is the same way Commanders fans view Deebo Samuel. Now, I think Davante has more years left, but Commanders fans are going crazy. Oh, we got Deebo. But in San Francisco, we're like, did you watch him last year? We all love Deebo, but it's like, seriously? Like, I don't think you're getting the guy you think you're getting. Now, maybe we're wrong, but Niner fans are then buying into Davante Adams, who schematically and play style wise doesn't fit what they want to do on offense either. It's the same face, same side of, or I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's the exact same situation. It is a two-headed coin. It's the exact same side on both sides. Davante, Deebo Samuel. No. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. No. I do not want Davante Adams here. I like Davante as a player with Rodgers and Green Bay. Like, there's so much to love. There's history there. It's more name value than there is production. And Davante can be much more productive than, say, Deebo Samuel can, I think, in this offense. I think with Brock Purdy, you'd see a relatively good offense. That said, when Kyle's out there screaming, block, 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 you have to almost pull Davante Adams off the field on running plays because he won't help you at all. At all. Like, it is like, wait, what? What are we doing? He doesn't even try sometimes. And that is a massive no-no on Kyle Shanahan's offense. Papa J asks here, Sterling, if Brandon Aiyuk underperforms, and we keep him, wouldn't it significantly hit our cap the next few years per contract? I think if Aiyuk plays, like, it's like a per game thing. So the reason why his cap is so low for us, or lower than it would have been, the bonus is low because he played 7 games last year. If he comes back, let's say, and plays 10 games next year, I don't think he will, but let's say he does, you'd have a lower bonus as well. So there is some like minute bonuses in there that you maybe want to avoid by trading him, which is why maybe San Francisco is trying to get out of the deal now. But I just think Aiyuk, like, without knowing the knee and how extensive the injury was, it seemed really serious. Which, again, I'm sure they have more intel than I do, obviously. I just don't like the idea of trading him because I think there's a chance Aiyuk maybe comes back and can give you something. Maybe it isn't worth his actual contract, which maybe is why the end they want to trade him. But I don't know. I just don't like losing deals like that. You want to get younger. You don't trade Aiyuk, and you don't go acquire, Davante Adams, who's like 32 years old now. You just don't do that. Let's see. Let's see. No, there's no more comments in the YouTube chat. So I want to let you know, if you don't want to play like Davante Adams, if you don't want to perform like Brandon Aiyuk, but you want to play like the GOAT himself, Jerry Rice, then you got to get yourself a can of GOAT fuel. Because, look, I'll tell you this. Myself, an avid coffee drinker, that when I was in college, I was popping 20 cups a day of coffee, and that was keeping me alive throughout my undergrad program at APU. And even to this day, my wife loves coffee. I love coffee, but we're getting older. We're inching towards the age of 30. I'll be 28 or 29 this year. Oh, my God. That's scary. You got to get healthy. Eat your proteins, maybe cut out certain things. Goat fuel will help you with that. It is one of the healthiest coffee alternatives out there for you. And if you click my link down below, you can save yourself 10% off your purchase of goat fuel, which, honestly, as Papa J says here, go out and thrive fuel. That's what this is. Go out there and thrive by using my link down below. Get a little discount and thrive by getting some goat fuel. Niner Media says here he wants some cowing fuel. Yeah, I don't know what's up with him. Needs to get bigger, more dense to help him out in the running game. But again, I really want to see Cowing take on a bigger role this year. And Tommy Huxley says, you're just a baby. I'm 47. I'll tell you this, brother. Let's see here if I can do math quickly. My brother is like 52. So there's a big gap in between. My mother's, well, I won't say her age, but I have siblings that are older than you. So I get it. I feel it. I feel like I'm 50 and I'm like my back, my legs, my hips. But yes, I am not even 30 years old just yet. But I tell you what, Goat Fuel has certainly helped me feel alive and feel under 30 thus far, which brings us to maybe two of the more clear and obvious rumors on the market today, that being with ones surrounding Javon Hargrave and Jordan Mason. Let's start with Hargrave first, because there are rumors around the Niners that are saying they're trying to trade Javon Hargrave before they inevitably release him. Now, the reports coming out were that John Lynch said that it was going to be a post-year and first cut. They want to give him time to hit the open market. and maybe they'll bring him back, which again, okay, cool. I like Javon Hargrave. I think on a cheap deal would be great. I don't think he'll get one, but there's a lot of, they're going to cut Hargrave. But now the reports are the rumors are, if you will, they're trying to trade him. And I think this is their last ditch effort to let's see if we can get something for him outside of freeing up some money. But when you look at what they can actually get for a player coming off a torn tricep, really isn't worth it. Now, I would admit getting a 7th round pick or a 6th round pick back would be great, but he's technically under contract still. But it's a 3-year deal, and I'm not sure if they really want to. Like, would an acquiring team want Javon Hargrave on a 3-year deal coming off a torn tricep? Probably not. And even if San Francisco trades him, although it would free up $15 million in cap space, it's about a $25 million dead cap hit, which, okay, if San Francisco is willing to eat dead cap, which they clearly are, if they're listening to offers for Brandon Aiyuk and thinking of trading away Hargrave and already traded away Debo, maybe they're saying, look, we'll eat all the dead cap in the world, give us that extra $15 million to spend this offseason. That would also give you $0 in net savings next year too. So it's a $15 million, freeing of cap, but a $25 million dead cap hit, which Duke with math is a result of a net $10 million loss per se. Then next year you save zero money. And it's like, why would you do that? You redid his deal for a reason with the intention of cutting him post June 1st, where in that case makes a lot more sense because you can save $12.3 million over the course of the next 2 seasons and only take a $14.7 million dead cap hit. So I don't buy the idea that they're going to trade Javon Hargrave. I think they want to, but just who's trading for our defensive tackle in this year's draft class that has honestly maybe the deepest defensive tackle class ever, or at least in the last decade or so, for a player in his 30s off a torn tricep on a 3-year deal in which you're probably going to have to restructure anyways, which is feasible. It just like the Niners probably wouldn't have redone his deal if that was the case. They would have just moved on and done things accordingly this offseason, trading him pre-restructure. But that brings us to, I think, a more likely option when it comes to trading away one of the players currently on the team, and that is Jordan Mason. So the Niners are of the understanding that Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy. They have high hopes for him this year. At the combine, they were glowing about him. They were like, yep, CMC's back. He'll be healthy, back for training camp. They are buying into the idea he is back, that he is back and good to go from the start, from the jump this coming season, which is great. That's awesome. But according to Matthew Berry of NBC Sports, been a lot of trade inquiries around a backup running back, Jordan Mason. And as we know, Jordan Mason was very valuable to this team last year. This team's leading rusher, where Christian McCaffrey wasn't playing. Jordan Mason stepped up and stepped in at a really good rate, although a shoulder injury and an ankle injury hurt him late in the year. You wish he was healthy the entirety of the season. Although there were signs he was really good. I think everybody is open to the idea that if you bring back Jordan Mason, it gives you more versatility. Christian McCaffrey can go outside. He can play in the slot. He can kind of be that, fill that Debo role to a certain extent. Mason gets more carries, gives you a more dynamic offense, if you will, than you saw last year, which didn't have CMC and at times didn't have a functionable Debo Samuel or Jordan Mason or Brandon Aiyuk and others on the offense. But the tricky thing about this is Jordan Mason is a restricted free agent in, 10 to 8 days. When you see that, the Niners have 3 options here. They can put a first-round tender on Jordan Mason. That means they're going to have to pay him $7.5 million this year. That's his salary. Or If he goes and signs elsewhere, they get a first-round pick back. Now, that's a crazy thing for a running back in this class that's so loaded. Nobody, I think, is going to give up a first-round pick for a running back like Jordan Mason, who I think is really good, albeit probably wouldn't be the number one back in this class by a large margin. Genty's there. Amarian Hampton's there. There's some really good backs in this year's draft class. Okay, first-round pick, probably off the board. A second-round pick, to me, is a little more likely, a little more manageable. I can see a team giving up a second-round pick for Jordan Mason on a contract of $5.3 million. Very similar to what San Francisco put on Jauan Jennings. It kind of makes teams more reluctant to sign Jordan Mason. In previous years, teams didn't want to sign Jauan Jennings because of a tender. It's almost kind of like the qualifying offer in baseball, where you give a player a qualifying offer, gives them a massive contract. They can not accept it, but if he goes somewhere else, well, then that team gets a comp pick back in return. In this case, first or second round pick. However, both those numbers may be a little too high, although 5.3 for a backup running back really isn't too bad, knowing that Mason's kind of like, you know what you're getting from Jordan Mason. Probably not going to be a bell cow back for you, but can certainly give you a different look. He'll go between the tackles. He'll give you some power, can alleviate Christian McCaffrey, which should be this team's number one priority this year, knowing he's 28 years old, coming off two pretty serious injuries on his lower half of his legs. Then there is the right to first refusal tag, which I don't know if it's the most likely option, but it's only at $3.2 million. San Francisco at that point could then say, look, we have the option to match any offer he gets, and it gives you more flexibility at a much cheaper option than a 5.3 hit or a 7.5 hit. And with San Francisco talking about wanting to save money, you could probably get a pretty good value for a player like Jordan Mason, who was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago out of Purdue. I think the right to refusal tag makes a lot of sense. I think a second round tender makes maybe a little more sense, knowing that you're kind of guaranteed a second round pick no matter what if he leaves in free agency. But as of now, I believe San Francisco has 6 to 8 days to work on a trade of Jordan Mason. I think trading him makes a ton of sense. If you can get a fourth round pick back or a third round pick back, you do it in a heartbeat. This running back class is loaded. I know there are some people that want, Cam Scatabo from Arizona. I like Kyle Monangai, Kalel Mullings from Michigan, Dylan Sampson from Iowa State, from Iowa. Damian Martinez from Miami. There's so many good running backs in this class that I think the Niners could value a little more than Jordan Mason. Younger, cheaper, obviously, less tread on those tires, less injuries to their shoulder. So if it was me, I would be completely open to the idea of trading Jordan Mason. I would do it tonight if I could. I think that the Niners are in a position where, yes, you want to get rid of the older players, higher salaries. However, running backs, you got to have about 4 or 5 each year. And if you can get younger there and you have Guerendo on a fourth round pick contract, you have a high end contract in Christian McCaffrey, but if you can fill that need with maybe another fourth round pick running back and a guy that in the future could have maybe higher upside than Guerendo or be part of a 2 running back system with Guerendo once CMC is gone, or the best case scenario, gives you a little more maneuverability as Christian McCaffrey ages to make him maybe more of a slot receiver for you in the next couple of years or so. You run to the podium, you run to wherever you have to go to make a trade happen. Get a fourth round pick. That is a big get for you if you can for Jordan Mason. Because again, undrafted guy. You turned him into something that most teams should want. The Broncos, the Saints, the Cowboys maybe. I could see Kansas City wanting Jordan Mason. The Chargers could want Jordan Mason. There's a lot of ways, a lot of avenues, a lot of teams that could want Jordan Mason out there. I think would actually give you something worth of maybe at least considering on the open market. And even John Lynch said, there's a lot of options open when it comes to Jordan Mason. So tell me down below in the comments, what should San Francisco do with Jordan Mason? Would you trade him? Would you try to keep him? Would you trade Javon Hargrave, or are you set on that post-June 1st designated cut? What do you think about a Brandon Aiyuk trade? If you missed my rant, go back and watch it. I think I laid out a lot of good points, albeit maybe some more frustration than usual with how San Francisco is doing things. Do you think San Francisco is open to franchise tagging Brock Purdy next offseason after making him play on and out the final year of his rookie deal? I think that's asinine. I think they're playing PR. And I think San Francisco is working on something that is going to make Niner fans either scratch their head, although make us really excited for the future. Tell me down below what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I want to thank Josh, Niner Media, Papa J, Boba, who says the Seahawks said they're releasing Tyler Lockett, could be a solid number 3 receiver. I can certainly see that. I would not mind that whatsoever. I actually may give that a thumbs up if I was San Francisco. I want to thank Tommy as well, Rob D, Marketing Pro, Khalil Young, so many more of you in here that were on the YouTube chat, JD Durham, 916_49ers. Hope you're all having a great day. Keys as well. Thank y'all so much for liking, sharing, subscribing, joining the YouTube chat. If you can, follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase, and grab your can of goat fuel down below to save yourself 10% off whatever you choose to buy. Josh sends us off here in the YouTube chat saying, we should have stayed with Mason all year and slowly integrated Christian McCaffrey back into the fray. Josh, that's a good way to end today's show. I completely agree. I hope they do that again, whether Mason's back or not. They got to alleviate some pressure off of Christian McCaffrey. And, well, time will tell what they do, but trading Jordan Mason is a really good idea for this team if they want to get younger and cheaper. But don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Give us that 5-star review on the audio podcasting platforms. It is the cheapest, easiest, and freest way to help the show out. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, and knowing how the offseason going, it'll probably be tomorrow. But until next time, stay faithful.